So I believe our farm has to do with traditions, and it's a special farm because we bring people and traditions together here, I believe, and that's something special to see now, because I think a lot of the farms nowadays are all built on how big they can build their operation, how much land can they gain, and and that's not my way of thinking. I think more like, as long as I can make a living, I'm happy, and I get to do what I want to do, and that's use horses on the farm, where I think a lot of other people are just so motivated by the financial end of it. Maybe they lose sight possibly on they lose sight on tradition.
I have so many people come up to me and say, don't quit what you're doing. And I guess that's the reason I keep on fighting with it, is trying to. And to me, it's that pleasure too, putting it all together. Who could believe that you could put a bunch of people together out in the field for one day like that and get the operation moving? We always used to, when we thrashed a great amount, we'd thrash up as high as 200 acres some years. And we'd start on a Friday afternoon, and we'd be hoping we'd be done over the weekend. And you'd go out after dinner on Friday, and everybody was new to the operation. And you'd wonder, how are we ever going to get this thing going? Nothing would be working right. And by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'd be thrashing. It was that easy. It just seemed like after a while, everything just kind of fell into place. And I think it's still the same way today yet. This is the first time we've run this machine. It was just done this spring. The restoration was just completed in June. And we took it to Bicycler's 100th anniversary celebration, and we ran it in there. But we didn't have any bundles to thrash. All you're doing when you're stooking bundles is the binder lays them in rows when it's cutting and tying the grain. And by hand you have to set those rows up so that the weather doesn't affect them, so they're not laying flat on the ground. And you put about 8 bundles in a stook like you stook a deck of cards. Exactly the same thing. And you set all your rows up and let them cure that way. And then if the weather goes bad, it doesn't hurt them anymore either. If you're not using a stook loader, you can set the stooks just about anywhere, and the wagon can swing anywhere when they're pitching to load up a load to pick the stooks up out of the field. But if you're using a stook loader, those rows have to be reasonably straight, because that loader can't swing in and out very fast. And we've always used stook loaders here as much as we could. Being as how there was not much crop last fall, there was no bundles left anywhere. So we decided we'd cut some this fall and do it right here at home. Actually, this machine belonged to what they called the Finn Syndicate at Trochu. That was a group of farmers that combined their operations together, and they all worked together. The land was all in like a community deal, and then eventually they all split up, and they went farming on their own. And this machine was kind of left as a derelict after that. It had been sold and it never got paid for, and they went and brought it home, but it was all wore out by that time. So it sat there for, I don't know, since the 1930s until I got it around, I don't know what year that was, but probably in the 80s sometime. And they wanted somebody to take it and do something with it, so I decided I would restore it. And it took me 25 years, I think, to get that all done. We've done everything, inside, outside. All the sheet metal is new. Inside is all new, all the wood is new. The feeder, when you look at it on the front end, that's all new sheet metal and all new wood, and a lot of the parts we had to make or get repaired. Either you make them or take old parts off of other machines and fix what you can. A lot of, like the sheet metal was all built. And a lot of that was done by hand. We had a sheet metal shop in Calgary that done a lot of the work, and when they could. Some of it they couldn't do. Some of it we had to make drawings for them so that they could make it. All the sides, that's all new. The whole side where you see silver color, that's all new sheet metal. And even underneath, that's all new sheet metal. I sawed those little holes where the brackets are. I could do some of that. But some of the work they had to do too. Where the hand holes are, where you see the plates on the side, I cut those holes. Those are 6-inch holes. But we were able to use hand saws to do that. And we used the old sheets for patterns to know where the holes were supposed to go. I couldn't work on it continually, and you'd take, you know, sheet metal into the sheet metal shop to get built, and it might be 2 months before you get it back. They would do it when they had spare time too. And that's why it took 25 years. I only worked on it periodically. And you can only work on that stuff so long, and then you have to leave it. It just starts to get you down. Your nerves start to get on working on you, and so you just have to drop everything and forget about it for a while. And then later you come back and it doesn't feel so bad anymore. The grain elevator on the other side, that I wanted that one because of the weigher that was on it. It was a special built weigher that was not built after 1926. And I liked the way it operated, so I restored it and put it on this machine. The top up on top is new. The auger, that's new. That auger is an odd size up on top there that you see that elevates the grain out into the wagon. That's a 7.5-inch auger. Nobody builds a 7.5-inch auger fighting anymore. I had to get that specially made in Manitoba. There's an outfit in Rosenort that they was rolling fighting for augers, and he rolled that for me. And the tubing, I had to get that made down in Lethbridge. The only shop that could make that was Charlton and Hill and Lethbridge. That was an old feeder off a different machine. It was, the particular make was what I wanted to put on here, and I even made the cylinder wider on this machine. The original cylinder was 36 inches on this machine, and I put a 40 on it, which I had from another old machine. And this machine is a 40-inch by 64 inches, and that means the cylinder width is 40 inches, and the body where the separation is done is 64 inches. It's the biggest machine that the Minneapolis company built. After 28, they never built any more of these. They built smaller machines and a different model. They were designed altogether different. One thing about this machine is the people pitching bundles into it don't have to be so careful how they place the bundles. Where some machines, the bundles have to be exactly one behind the other at the heaviest. This machine, they can pile them up a little bit, and it doesn't bother the separation part of it at all.
That's what I was wondering too, because they didn't seem as neat.
No, they were kind of piling them in there, one on top of the other and everything, and I didn't care because the bundles were nice and dry, and we knew there was nothing coming out of the back going up in the straw pile.
And my dad said you always wanted the heads to go in first.
Head first, correct.
Which didn't always happen.
No, there was the odd one getting in backwards, I noticed yesterday there. I don't think that anybody that was driving the wagons really knew that. To tell the guys pitching that put them in head first. This machine is a lot of times by the old timers is referred to as the Cadillac of threshing machines. That's why I wanted this one, because I knew it was the last years they built them. Oh yeah, and for the capacity. And I had run Minneapolis machines before, so I knew how they operate. This machine is driven by flat belts. This is the drive belt that drives the whole mechanism. And it's a belt that's 150 feet long if you measure it all the way around. And it's a little bit longer than you would normally use on a machine this size. Generally, they were using 125-foot belts with gasoline tractors, but this belt was designed to be used with a steam engine. And that's the reason that it's 150 feet long. And the reason you've got it that long is to keep the steam engine back away from the machine in case of fire. Well, I like to set in a bit of a crosswind with the steam engine because of sparks from the steam stack. And if it's off just a little bit to the side, it'll miss the straw pile if there's a spark flies out.
And right now,
well, we're dead in line with it right now, but it's going to change again. You watch, now it's starting to go back the other way. Now we're clearing again. So there isn't much we can do about it. We have to put up with what we got. We'll put the screen down here pretty quick on the stack, and the reason for the screen is to keep the sparks from flying out. They're called spark arresters. That tells me how much steam pressure is in the boiler. Right now we're at about 100. 130 pounds, not quite, just under 129. If we get up to 142, 143 pounds, the relief valve is going to let go and let some pressure off. But we're okay yet.
So Robin, could you tell me again how much wood this thing takes?
Probably 1.5 tons. And it doesn't matter what kind of wood. A pound of wood and a pound of oak, a pound of oak, a pound of poplar, a pound of whatever, they're all the same amount of heat. It's just their density is different.
Yeah.
So that one weighs more than the other.
So you can use almost anything in there.
For wood, yeah.
Now water is different, isn't it? You have to
We're very particular what we use for water.
explain.
Well, if we got the wrong water in there, for example, our well water here, the boiler will start to prime after a while, and that means the water's going up with the steam, up the stack, and you can't have that. That's dangerous business.
What do you mean the water goes up with the steam?
Well, it goes up with the steam through the dome and right through the engine. And if you get too much water in the cylinder, you can blow the head right off the cylinder. Because water doesn't give, where steam gives.
This is almost like the old steam locomotives.
They were very particular what water they put in them too. When they pulled up to a water tank, there was a chart at the water tank, and they had bricks of water treatment. And the chart would say you put in so many bricks of this and so many bricks of that for so many gallons of water. And we're using water treatment here, but sparingly. When we get towards the end, we'll probably use more. You have to have a certificate and you have to take a course to be able to run a traction engine. And then you have to put in 100 hours of operation before you get your license. Oh, they're nothing to play around with. No question about it. They're not toys. They can be a faithful servant or they can be certain death. They can be your worst nightmare if things go wrong. So, you know, you have to have the training to run those things.
What can go wrong?
Well, boiler blow up for one thing. That's the worst nightmare that you could possibly have, because if a boiler blows up, somebody's going to get killed. There's no question about it. Or the flywheel could fly apart, I guess. It's not rubbing that hard, is it?
No, it just started.
This started here a little while.
You find the shim?
Yeah, we took it out.
Well, you took it out. Well, if it's running against that arm, it's going to make it worse.
Where's that big one? The thick
It's
one.
on the back of that other truck. You gotta shim that to make it run away from that arm.
Yeah, we gotta bring it this way.
I can mechanic, Robin. Come on.
Oh, I know you can. That's why you're doing that job. The spare sockets are on there too if you needed them.
Yeah,
You put those two in and then see what happens. Okay, you guys are all right?
We're not sure.
When you're driving with this flat belt, you usually try and drive with a twist in the belt. And the reason for that is if the wind should catch the belt, it won't throw it over so bad. And it also makes the machine run the right direction, because most tractors were designed, they ran clockwise on the belt pulley. And these machines run counterclockwise on their drive pulley. So you had to reverse it too, so when you put a twist in it, that reversed the belt. I don't think we have a twist. We don't have a twist in it.
No, you know.
Okay, put a twist in the belt here. Okay, that's the end of the belt. Okay. Like this?
Yep.
And you don't try to pull it against the pulley like that. You just walk with it.
Okay.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, are you gonna run it?
Yeah, right now.
Okay, let me get up there.
Back when we were threshing with diesel tractor or gas tractor, depending on which one we were using, people would come and they would say, "How come you don't have a steam engine on the thrashing machine?" Well, I didn't own one. Quite simple. And I said, "I would like to find one, but I can't find one." Well, as it turned out, I had a guy helping us. His name was Keith Colbert, and he had come from Manitoba. And anyways, he overheard this the one day while we were talking about it with some other people. He said, "I was driving a guy around, and his name was Bob Anderson, and he was running for the legislature in Manitoba. He was campaigning, and he said, we stopped at this guy's place, and his name was Gus Seek, where we stopped. And he said, there was a steam engine sitting in the yard. He said, I wonder whatever happened to that steam engine." And I said, "Well, why don't you find out?" So anyways, yeah, I said, "I will." So anyway, he did. But anyway, Bob Anderson, he said, "Well," he said, he said, "I haven't seen Gus Seek since we were out there at his place campaigning." And he said, he said, "Gus was an NDPer. He wasn't a conservative, but he said he still listened to us. He didn't kick us out of the yard. But he said, I'll find out whatever happened to that steam engine." So he did. He drove up to Beausejour, where the steam engine was at, which is north and east of Winnipeg. And what he found out was that Gus Seek had died, but his wife was still alive, and his widow was living there on the place where the steam engine was, and the steam engine was still sitting in the yard. So he asked her what they were going to do with it. And she said, "Well, we don't know right now." And he said, "Well, would you mind if a couple of fellows come and had a look at it?" And she said, "No, by all means," she said. "If we decided to sell it and they were interested, we'd be interested in talking with them." So anyway, Keith Colbert and I, we got in his truck and we headed for Manitoba one cold December day, about like today. It was about the same time of the year, it's about around the 10th of December. We head for Manitoba. Well, we left here at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, we were going down the street in Winnipeg. You've heard of the coldest place in Canada, or Portage in Maine? Well, at 2 o'clock in the morning, that's exactly what it looked like, too. There wasn't a soul to be seen anywhere. So anyways, we made it to Dougal that night. Then we got up the next morning and we headed up to Beausejour, and the wind was howling out of the southeast. We had snowsuits on and stuff, and I looked this engine over in the yard there and got introduced to the lady that owned it. And I decided that if it ever came up for sale, I was interested in it. Well, so anyway, as it turned out, about May, I got a phone call, and there was the lady from down there in Manitoba. She said, "If you want to buy that George White steam engine," she said, "it's for sale." So she said, "You better come down if you're interested." So anyways, about the 10th of June, we headed back down there, and we bought the engine and had a truck come out from Winnipeg from Arnold Brothers and pick it up and had it shipped out here. But it took 3 years of work to get it to where it was operational again. And this is the one you saw working this fall. Some of the belts are twisted, some of them are running straight, as you can see. And the reason for that is for the direction of travel. Some of the components of the machine have to run one direction, some components have to run the other direction. So that's why there's straight and there's twisted belts. And of course every belt is made for the size of the work that it has to do on the machine. If it doesn't take that much power, you use a narrower belt or a thinner belt. If it takes a lot more power, so for example, this is the blower drive belt. That takes the most power out of the machine that you're going to need. So it's a fairly heavy, wide belt. The same as the drive belt, it's a fairly heavy belt. Later ones up on top, all they're driving is return tailings off of the machine as it's separating. So it's not really doing that much work. Where something's driving fairly heavy all day long, you may not even use a belt, you'll use a chain. You have to lubricate them a little bit every day, but that's about all.
Speaking of lubrication, is there a lubrication, is there a belt dressing that you put on the belts, or?
We do occasionally if we need it, but we don't like to use it any more than we have to because it makes the belt stick to the pulley. And it can wear your belt after a while, and if you look, you can see there's belt dressing on this belt. See the dark stuff? That's dressing that's been put on. And it will, like as the belt wears, it will pull some of the rubber out of the belt if it gets too sticky. So we like to use it sparingly. For a drive belt, for example, you like to have a heavy belt. The heavier the belt, the better it'll stay on the pulley. And the better it'll grip the pulley too.
Where would you get a belt like that?
It is available. There are still sawmills using flat belting. So yeah, if you lighter belting you can buy here because the round balers use it. But this heavy belting like this, you'd probably have to order that, and it would have to come from a place like Vancouver, where they stock that heavy stuff. It is available, but it is pricey. It sells by the inch, not the foot.
How much do you think this thing cost you?
Probably in the $20,000 to $30,000 range dollars. That doesn't give me anything for my time. And to sell it, I don't know if you'd get your money out of it. It's like all antiques. It's like doing an antique car. You're lucky to get your money back if you sell it. You won't in most cases. It's the pleasure of doing it, I guess. They used to do hundreds of acres with one of these machines in a fall. Probably 1,000. I knew a man that had a machine was a little smaller than this. He farmed over by Airdrie, and he was one of the last people to thrash bundles. And he used to do 1,000 acres a fall. This crop here, this is a pretty heavy crop. I think if you got 30 acres a day done, you'd be doing pretty good on a good day. Well, yeah, these small one-day bees are becoming more popular. People like to go to them, and I don't know what the attraction is. There at one time they kind of died out, and now they seem to be getting to where you don't have trouble getting people to come and bring a team of horses even anymore if they have horses. That just but at one time it was pretty tough to find anybody that was interested. Now all of a sudden we're going to a threshing bee. The neighbor used to have a Red River Special machine, and it was a 36 by 64, and he used to figure 70 acres average wheat crop a day, which is pretty good going. If he could pound that much through, he was doing all right. And he had 14 bundle wagons on his outfit. We like to run about 5 here, 5 bundle wagons, and the reason for that is we have 2 stook loaders.
Yeah, I had 4 on the stook loader, yeah. It's 4 abreast on the stook loader, and it picks the whole stook up and puts it on an elevator and dumps it into these wagons, and it really is a labor saver.
The loaders were built in Winnipeg. They were made by Acme Manufacturing Company. And that was a follow-up from the Stewart Loader Company. There was a farmer at Selkirk, his name was Stewart, his last name, and he really designed those loaders. And they called them Stewart loaders to start with. But he was successful. But he didn't quit. He kept experimenting, trying to build other stuff, and he pretty near lost the farm over it. So then Acme Manufacturing took that Stewart loader over in Winnipeg, and they redesigned it quite a bit. They made it easier pulling, and these were the last ones. The one loader there with the galvanized elevator on the sides with the galvanizing, that was the last one built.
Yeah, they sure enjoyed them, whoever had them at that time. We just got this one here, come from the Cayley Hutterite colony. Was built, and it was sold in 1948 out of Regina by McPherson and Tom Company. And they were in Calgary too. They supplied parts for the Acme loaders. Like anybody that had any amount of acres to do would have 2 loaders. They didn't go with one. Hutterite colonies all had 2 loaders. And the reason for that was to keep up to the machine. You could play 4 horses out on one of those loaders in a day on a big thrashing machine. After a while, they just wore out. So that's the reason we've got the 2 loaders here, so it wasn't so hard on the horses.
Yep.
And you can wear them down even with the 2 outfits. They're loading fairly steady when you have 5 wagons out here, and those wagons are 9 feet by 18 feet.
The problem with the stook loader is it piles it up, and if you don't stop and level your load out, it's a lot harder pitching. But if you stop, maybe twice even, and then level your load and then load a little more with the stook loader, it makes it a lot easier for these guys right now. That's where when you're field pitching, they're prestigiously put on the wagon and it made it really easy to pitch off.
And they were unusual. Not everybody owned a stook loader years ago. A lot of this stuff was field pitched by hand.
Now, I wasn't noticing the racks, like the racks that Dad used that had the V.
They were built on a V, yeah, so you could jump off and on easy and you could pitch into them easier. These racks that we're using are built to use beside the stook loaders. They got a low side and a high side. And it makes it a little harder to operate. You can only come in on one side, one way on the machine, either come in from the back on one side or the front on the other side. But the horses get used to that after a while. And they get used to walking beside the loaders too. It's not a problem after they get used to them.
And they were invented at the end of the thrashing era, which was unfortunate because there wasn't many around. The combines were coming in once they got going good, and that was the end of their career. So there's a few sitting around this country in the trees and stuff, but there isn't many, and there's very few operating left in Western Canada. Robin rebuilt 2 here and did a good job, and they're really something to see because 99% of the people have never seen one, and especially operating.
Oh, we did it last year out here, same field. Then they had missed, I don't know, a number of years in between. A lot of people would like them to do it more often, but it's a big commitment for JR and Rob. All the helper types want them to do it more often, but it's the whole setup and getting ready, I think, that takes so much time. So much of Robin and JR's time. Whoa, whoa. You ready, Fred? Yeah. Walker!
A lot of it's the driver too. The driver has to know where that wagon is when he's loading and how full it's getting and whether he should be slowing up or speeding up or what he should be doing.
Just trying to build the back of it first. Go. For the middle. Ease them up if I have to get in front of it. Go. Didn't lose a one. Oh, maybe one. I don't know. Now these guys will level this out there so we can get quite a few more on.
And that's what you said makes it easier?
It a lot easier to pitch off, yeah.
It's an art.
What? Okay. Step up. Stop.
You got a load now.
I thought they'd done real well myself, you know. These horses work very well for the little bit they do anymore now. You have to have experience handling horses to be able to drive horses. Yeah, you can take an old broke team and drive them around if you've never driven anything before, but sooner or later something's going to happen if you're not aware of everything that's going on around you. We've been lucky. We've had guys come and help us like this fall with teams. Art Cox come, he's been here before 20 years ago with the same team of horses.
How many years have you done this, Glenn, at our place, do you know? Like,
I was trying to think of that the other day. gotta be 30 years.
Yeah,
Going back helping Ralph.
yeah. Fellow by the name of Ralph Loosemore used to do this for us, and Glenn kind of took his spot. And he worked for TELUS for years. He used to play hooky all the time. Come here.
But there was other people that had never been here before, and everything worked out just fine. The horses worked well. The men knew how to drive. They knew how to work around a threshing outfit. The people that come with horses, it's a chance to get to use their horses and get them to do something useful. And it makes better horses out of them. After one day, you can tell the difference on those horses.
Robin himself, though, at one time he had 20 head of draft horses here when I was growing up. And those are probably some of the first recollections of the horses on the farm here.
I sold the last team of horses that my father owned. When I took the farm over after he had died, there was still one team here, and they were getting on in age, and we weren't going to get much work out of them anymore. And so I sold them off, but only lasted about a year, and we had a real tough winter, and I couldn't get the tractor started to feed the cows. And I remember there was a guy by the name of Bill Perry, who was a horse dealer in Calgary, and I'd heard that he had a team of horses for sale. So I drove into Calgary, and he had a feedlot down in southeast Calgary somewhere, and he had this team of horses there. I bought that team of horses, and that was the winter of 1969 when I bought them. So yeah, I didn't go too long without horses around the place, and that was the beginning of buying more horses after that. Somewhere along the way, I heard about a man by the name of Fred Mattis out in the Castor country, and they said Fred's got horses. He's always got horses for sale. So anyways, the neighbor Balser Smalls and I, we drove out to Fred Mattis's farm one day. It was in January. So I picked out 4 horses. And he said, I'll have them in on such and such a day. And so anyways, we left it at that. And when the time come to go back and pick the horses up, he had them in the yard. He had them in the corral. But they weren't haltered yet. And he claimed they were halter broke. Well, halter broke in one man's idea is different than another man's idea, I can tell you that. Anyway, we ran these horses into a chute, and it had Dutch doors on the front of it. I remember that yet. That means there was an upper and a lower door, and he had the 2 doors closed when he'd run them in, and then he'd open up the top door, and the horse would stick his head out, and we'd put the halters on that way. And that's how we got them haltered. But the last horse we ran in, the horse up and reared up in the chute and put his leg out over the front of the chute with his front foot, and he struck me right on the shoulder. Old Fred never even batted an eye. He turns around and looks at me and he said, see, he said he likes you. And, so anyway, we got these horses loaded, got them hauled home and put them in the barn and tied them up in the stalls in the barn. About an hour later, they were all running around the yard, dragging the stalls around the yard. They tore the stalls right out of the barn. But anyway, we did finally get them broke and get them haltered up and harnessed up, and I used them quite a bit. Those 4 horses, I got quite a bit of use out of them. Okay, well, we were just talking about these horses that pulled the mangers out of the barn, and the one horse we named him Big Jake. He was a great big guy, but he was not a bad-natured horse. He was just a horse that you could never tie up in a barn. Every time you tried to tie him up, he'd either tear the halter shank off or break the halter or something like that. And we tried every trick that anybody ever told us how to break a horse that they wouldn't pull back in the stall. And we finally just gave up. And we just never tied him up anymore. And he'd stand in the stall all day long as he wasn't tied up. And once in a while he'd back out and have a look around, then he'd walk right back into the stall again, and he ended his days here that way. We never bothered to tie him at all. So, sometimes I guess you have to use a little psychology on these guys.
When I was a kid, I remember hearing the horses coming into the yard, and I could hear the sound of the harness clanking and the sound of the wheels of the implements on the ground. The horses were coming in, and then I remember I'd be at the house, and so I'd run to the barn, and then the horses would appear, and then the men would unhitch the horses, and and drive them to the barn. And once they got them to the barn, they would untie the horses from each other, and then they just let them go. And then they'd walk up to the water trough and they'd have a drink. And then from the water trough, once the horses were done drinking with their bridles on, the horses would walk into the barn all by themselves and walk into their right stall all by themselves. And I always found that amazing as a kid. And the influence thing, I think, sure helped me to grow up with the horses here, working them and in the field and stuff. And but I also believe that you have to be born with the horse bug. And basically that's in a nutshell, that's how I grew up. And so the first time I remember driving horses from a dad was at a thrashing, and I believe it was 1988 or 1987, 1988. I got the opportunity to drive a bundle wagon. So anyways, that was pretty exciting for me at that time, because I always wanted to join the men, and I was old enough then, and I don't know, I might have been 12, 13 years old, and it was a good old team we had, and the name of the team was Annabelle McGee, and they were so good. You could say whoa, you didn't have to even pull on the lines, you just say whoa and they'd stop. But they made it into the Calgary Stampede Parade quite a few times. People aboard them, and several other parades around Alberta, so they were a good old team. And so that year, that was my first year, 1988. At that point in time, my dad's horses were getting older, and he was kind of getting out of the horses, and I was taking charge, I guess is what you would say. I decided that I wanted a team of my own, but I wanted a team of registered Belgian horses. So the opportunity came around, and fellow that worked for my dad on and off and always brought horses to our thrashings and haying events was Peter Nowakowski. He was raising Belgian horses up there by Acme, and I asked him if I could buy a team of his Belgians, and he said sure. And Pete was quite a character, you know. He always had a way of cracking a joke, and a real good horseman. And he sold me this team of Belgians, and it was for so much money and for so much grain. Well, I didn't own any grain, so I had to rob some grain out of the grain bin from my dad. But anyways, we made this horse trade, and I got these two mares, and that was the foundation of my horse herd. And so I had these two mares, and I raced quite a few colts out of them. Glenn Castleman and me, we ended up buying a stallion together, and that stallion actually belonged and was raised from Ralph Loosemore. And that's where all my Belgians come from, was from Ralph Loosemore stallion and Peter Nowakowski's mares. And two of the best horsemen that I know of, their demeanor, them horses were so well, and their bone structure and everything, they're beautiful horses. And their thick manes, and so when I combined the two people's herds together, basically, and made my own herd, I guess is the best way to describe it. And so from then on, so I raised probably, I don't know, there would be 10 or 12 colts there from them mares, them foundation mares. They were better natured horses, these ones of mine, than my father's horses. Just the temperament of that stallion I bought, he was a very nice horse, and the mares that I bought were very, very nice natured horses. And yeah, I can see that in my colts now today, that they're willing to work with you. Where like my dad's horses, I just remember, I was young, but I remember they had a lot of, they had some problems with them. They had to really work them down, which also, maybe because other men were driving them all the time, where I've only handled my own horses, which probably has helped too. So the most important part of harnessing horses is brushing the shoulders.
You don't have to brush the rest of the horse necessarily, but you got to brush the shoulders because that's where all the work is being done. There's a reason why I do that. So I had a bit of dilemma this year when it come to picking the horses that I was going to use. I had to take 4 horses and put them on a cultivator. They were all young horses, and pick one because I lost a horse last year, the mate to the mare that I drive on the left. So what I did was I drove them for 3 days and I picked the best one that I felt that would work for our thrashing, and I think I made the right choice. His name's George.
So George has never seen this before, huh?
No, you can sure tell. It'll be interesting the first load today because I'm already loaded. So. Ain't quite making it. He's trying hard though. So typically I start all my colts this way. This technique is called hobbling. Teaches them good manners, how to stand while hitching and unhitching. So once I'm up on the rack, I'll have somebody take the hobbles off for me.
How's George doing, JR?
Doing really good. Wish we could thrash another 2 more days. When we first started on Friday there, we just run the stook loader by itself out in that 30 acres. And then the first time I pulled up beside him, this horse reared up and bolted. He bolted maybe 10 feet. And then I got him pulled back in and he calmed right down. And we did 1 lap around a 30 acre field and then he settled right in after that. But he was on, my arms were sore the first round around that field, I'll tell you. But then after that, he was good. He kind of settled down, and they just got to get used to things.
Yeah, Dad's Day, they threshed for a couple months. So those horses were broke.
Yeah, sure makes a difference, even 3 days. She's done it her whole life, but she's a cantankerous old mare, and she knows what she's doing, and sometimes she's worse than him, but she's just feeding off him and trying to make it her own situation. But it's not that she doesn't know what to do. She just cranky old mare. Go. Go. Hey, George. Yeah, that mare, she's just being a mare. Slowly fading this way, thinking, oh, if I just sneak over this way, maybe I can go. She knows better. And actually, he's doing a lot better than her a lot of the time, you know. Like if I could get 2 more loads in, or even another load, I'm sure I can hang my lines up on the peg and start pitching, but by that time we'll be done the field. That's why I said if the guy thrashed 3 days, it'd be a lot better than just 1 or 1.5.
I'm just practicing a green team, going to drive them in past the steamer and the separator just to get them used to the noise and the clutter and everything. It's always trouble getting new teams. Get up. Get up.
Now, Fred, has either one of these horses been here before?
No, no, they've never been into the separator. Well, I've got a 20-year-old quiet horse on the left, so I'm hoping that he'll come in all right. But once it's running, it's quite a clatter. Whoa, boys. Whoa. Whoa, whoa. Stay there. Whoa. This is going to be trouble. I'll have to be hanging on to them. What we did at home one time was tie them to the grain tank, shut the separator on, drive them in and tie them to the grain tank, but that doesn't work so good either. Then they're not used, better off to get them used to the clutter when they drive in. Whoa, I'll go around again and he gets it running, I'll bring him in again. Must have had some trouble there, or some adjustments to do. Get up, Travis. Get up. The horses didn't stand very good, and I should have an overcheck on them. They want to put their head down and get tangled up and fuss, but I think when they get tired, they'll come down and be pretty good.
You got through it.
Got through it, yeah. A good man on the front hanging on to them. That's really important.
Yeah.
Tired, Fred?
Oh, they're just cranky. They're tired. One's ornery, they want to go home.
And he's talking about the horses too.
Yeah, they need to be a lot tighter to stand good. They're just fussy.
Still.
Yeah, they're a bit spoiled. They're not used enough.
Yeah. That's what JR was saying. If we could just have a couple more days with them.
Yeah. Yeah, 2 more days, and then you see pictures of the old-fashioned machine. The horse is standing there sleeping right beside the separator. And that's what long days of work does. But when they're not used, they fuss for the first while.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
JR said that he broke a couple of your horses there?
This one, and this one was all JR. Yep. Ginger, Shirley, and Dixie.
So it's your first time? What do you think you're doing?
Oh, this is neat.
Yeah, it's great. I have old home videos of my grandpa doing this like in the 80s and 90s, and I thought, oh, I get to go do it now, so it's pretty cool. So happy to be here for sure.
That's an experience that you only see once or twice. Most people never see it.
No.
A little tired. She's cranky. She's old. She's almost at retirement stage. But I'm glad I had her because I got a bunch of young ones right there. There's 3 there anyways. There's a couple older ones, but there's 3 there that I've now started well, and they just need to be seasoned. And this horse here, she just loves putting her head down with the collar.
Does she?
Oh,
Loosens it off.
when I harness this horse, I gotta tie a knot in it like this.
Oh, you do?
Otherwise, the time you get the harness out here, the collar's already on the halter shank, so I always tie it with her hair. So she's just smart that way. But I've started all my colts with this old mare over the years, but she's getting to the point where she's getting pretty old and cranky. Georgie did very well for his first thrashing, first real working actually, other than the cultivator. got the right nature. I called him my Walt Disney horse because he just had the right mindset even when he was young. And the reason why I call him the Walt Disney horse, I was at Walt Disney one time and they had a horse that just looked just like him, and they had these trolley cars and people everywhere, and this big old horse is pulling this trolley car. It just broke to death. It looked a lot like him, so I call him my Walt Disney horse. Slide it over your left arm as you walk back, and then the britchin. That looks close enough. Here, Jerry, hang the hames up first. I know it's heavy. I can help you if you want. There you go. Hang them up first.
We have a big tangled mess up here.
I think we already do.
It'll be something for you to do later, you know?
Okay, so you got it twisted. So what we'll do is the right side. This is the right hand. You can go like there. Now we're square. Okay, never hang the back pad. You get a crease in it. Just all you got to do is just hang that up and let the britchin hang.
Okay.
There you go. We'll grab the next one and see if you do any better.
We'll see.
Watch this, Sherry. Okay, so once you undo this, like this, grab it like this, pull it towards you,
Oh, I see.
throw your arm in it like this, or your hand, walk back to this one, put your arm in it, and then the next one, and then just walk that way, and it'll stay, without getting tangled up. Yeah. Yeah. One more. There you go. Now stop right there. What I do is throw that like that, and now I go back because I'm right-handed. I go like this, and then I grab the hames. Yeah. Yep. Sure. Hang the hands first. Walk backwards now, so you get it straight. Now all you gotta do is hang that part. There.
Way easier.
It's a little tricks.
Consistent, right?
Yep.
Makes a difference.
That's a pony harness I built, Doug.
Oh.
Miniature pony harness. That's my first harness I ever built.
Oh, for your little one.
For my little one. So now that I've built this, I know how to go about it. So all I gotta do is I built the dies and everything for this.
Really?
So now I'm going to build the dies for heavy harness. It actually was harder to scale it down.
Yeah.
But like look at the little collars. Look at the collar difference. Big draft horse to a mini.
Yeah.
But the same collar maker, eh? These were really good collars, long straw collars. But yeah, he made a Ezra Streicher out of Milverton, Ontario. One of the best collars around. Why I like him is because he puts this in it. And over time, this will flatten out and your hames will fall off. So he built this raise here, and they never come off, even when they get older.
Wow.
He's the only guy around that did that. So you always hang your collars like this, Sherry. So this is left-hand horse hanger, but you hang it so it dries out and upside down to keep its shape. That's why you hang them like that, just like that.
And so you've got a pad on the one, but not on the others, or?
Yeah. Just to fit the horse a little bit better. She's gotten older and thinner in the neck, so I had to put this pad here. And these are non-scald pads where it's a vinyl, so they don't chafe their shoulders.
So the old mare gets a treat.
Well, that way they get to know it's not so bad. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming and keeping the traditions alive. I know it's a lot of work. We worked a month on this, getting wagons ready and equipment and horses. The biggest part of it is lining up the people and on the phone, and it's a big deal to organize nowadays. But yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming, and hopefully we'll do it again in the future. So thanks. It's been a lot of work and challenging, over the years. A lot of work, a lot of maintenance, a lot of money. But honestly,
I wouldn't have it any other way because this is a special farm.